They told me I didn't deserve my own childhood home. Yes, the same home I painted, repaired, and protected, while they pretended to be the perfect family on Facebook. My parents said I had no claim, but they forgot one tiny detail. I remember everything they tried to hide. Every signature, every lie, every secret bank withdrawal. So I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply opened the drawer they prayed I'd never touch and took back every piece of power they stole. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. I didn't expect the judge to go pale. Not that pale. Not the kind of pale that says, "Oh, this is about to ruin someone's entire bloodline." But there he was, staring at the folder I slid across the wooden bench like it was radioactive. My parents sat behind me, Mom clutching her pearls as if they could shield her from consequences, Dad drumming his fingers like he was the victim of some wild misunderstanding, and my brother? He was sweating so hard I thought the courtroom AC had broken. People always ask what was in that folder, and truthfully, I wish I could build suspense and say it was some cinematic, shocking reveal, but honestly, it was just paperwork. Paperwork they didn't think I was smart enough, bold enough, or angry enough to ever look for. Paperwork they hid. Paperwork that legally proved the childhood home they claimed I didn't deserve had been signed to me years ago by my grandmother. The real villain move was that they forged my signature later to reverse it. That's why the judge turned into chalk dust. But let's rewind. Because the real story didn't start in court. It started about 3 hours earlier, in the empty shell of my grandmother's old sewing room. A room everyone assumed I had forgotten. A room they swore they had cleaned out. Families can lie boldly when they're confident you'll never fact-check them. Except I did. I woke up that morning with a strange kind of clarity. The kind that happens when you're done being polite, done being manipulated, done being the child who plays mediator to adults who never grew up. I walked through the old house, the one they insisted I didn't deserve, the one I apparently never contributed to, even though I patched the walls, painted the porch, and replaced the thermostat at 16. You know, the usual things unworthy children do. The house felt different that morning. Not nostalgic, not painful, just truthful. Like the walls were finally tired of lying for them. I went straight to the tiny sewing room at the end of the hall, the one that still smelled like lavender and fabric softener. They told me they'd already sorted her belongings. Translation: they threw out anything that proved the house wasn't theirs to control. But here's the thing about people who hide secrets. They're rarely thorough. I tapped the wall once, then twice. Then on the third tap, the hollow sound echoed. The little wooden panel popped out just enough for me to pull it off. Behind it sat a metal box. My grandmother's handwriting still visible on the masking tape. For her. Not me by name, but her, and I knew she meant me. Inside the box were letters, receipts, the original deed, copies of signatures, and a key. One I didn't recognize, but felt important. Not emotional important, legally important. This was the moment right here where the story truly begins. Me sitting on the floor, papers spread around me like the crime scene they actually were. Every document contradicting the narrative I'd been fed for years. Narrative 1. We're fixing the house, that's why things look different. Reality. They'd changed the locks after transferring the deed. Narrative 2. You don't understand the stress of maintaining property. Reality. They forged my signature on the property taxation documents. Narrative 3. We're just protecting you. Reality. They were protecting themselves from being caught. Families love calling it protection when what they really mean is control. And let's be honest, mine had been controlling everything about this house since the day my grandmother died. The irony? She trusted me with the house because she knew exactly who they'd become without a conscious supervising them, and she knew I'd been the only one in that home who ever cared without an agenda. But my parents couldn't handle that. They couldn't handle the idea of me having something they didn't approve, manage, or profit from, so they tried to erase me from my own inheritance. Cute. Very cute. Everything in the sewing room clicked into place, like one of those mystery puzzles where the ending suddenly rewrites the beginning. And standing there, dust on my jeans, papers in my hands, betrayal sinking into my skin like cold rain, I didn't feel sadness. I felt strategy. Rage is messy. Strategy is precise. I don't deserve the house, I whispered, laughing under my breath. All right, then. I packed every document into a folder so thick it barely closed, grabbed my coat, and walked out before my parents even woke up. They'd invited me to breakfast that morning, something about clearing the air and family unity. Sure, nothing says unity like committing property fraud together. Instead, I drove straight to the courthouse. When the clerk saw the paperwork, her eyebrows hit her hairline. You're filing a full inheritance dispute? No, I said calmly, sliding the forged pages forward. I'm filing a fraud report before filing the dispute. That's when things sped up. Investigators asked questions. I answered. They asked for evidence. I had it. They asked if the forged signatures belonged to who I claimed, and I said the only sentence that ever felt truly necessary. My father taught me to recognize his handwriting. That's when they called a judge in early. That's when my parents were notified. And that's how we ended up in the courtroom, with my mom whispering excuses under her breath like temporary spells, and my dad refusing to make eye contact. But none of that mattered. Not the tension, not the silence, not the history. What mattered was watching the judge flip to the page I marked with a yellow tab, the page proving that my grandmother's final legal act was naming me as the owner of the house they claimed I didn't deserve, and watching his jaw lock as he whispered, "This changes everything." That moment wasn't the end of the story. It was the moment the story finally told the truth. And if you were sitting there, parents shrinking behind you, judge reading every lie they told out loud, what would you have done? Before the judge even opened his mouth, before my parents started whispering frantic excuses that sounded like a broken radio, before my brother's face turned the color of expired yogurt, there was a moment so quiet it almost didn't feel real. The kind of stillness that happens right before lightning hits the ground. I could feel every eye in the courtroom shift toward me, not because I was dramatic or loud or vengeful, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't apologizing for the truth. But let's rewind again, because the moment that truly set the storm in motion didn't happen in court. It happened 30 minutes earlier, in the courthouse hallway, while I sat on a wooden bench, clutching the folder like it was a grenade. And honestly, it was. My parents arrived, together of course, matching coats, matching expressions, matching lies. They looked like a political couple stepping out of a scandal, hoping good lighting would save their reputation. My mother approached first, her heels clicking like accusations. "We didn't think you'd actually go this far," she hissed, as if dignity was somehow optional. My father stayed a few feet behind her, shoulders tense, eyes darting like he was calculating an escape route. He only does that when he's guilty. I didn't look up, didn't flinch, didn't fold. Instead, I asked, "Did you really think hiding a legal document would make it less true?" My mother inhaled sharply, hand flying to her chest. "You weren't ready to own a house," she insisted, as if twisting the narrative might soften the betrayal. "We did what we had to do," I laughed. Not happily, not mockingly, but with the kind of exhausted amusement only someone deeply done with the delusion can manage. "So you forged my name because you were protecting me?" She stumbled over her next breath. And that was the moment my father stepped forward, lowering his voice like he expected me to protect him from his own actions. "We were trying to keep the house in the family," he said. "It belongs to all of us." I finally looked up and met his eyes. "It belonged to Grandma," I said, "and she gave it to me." His face cracked, just slightly, enough to show he knew the truth, enough to show he feared it. But the moment that really defined everything wasn't theirs. It was mine. Because standing in that hallway, listening to the two people who raised me try to rearrange reality around their convenience, something clicked in a way it never had before. I realized I wasn't a character in their story anymore. They were characters in mine. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors then, calling my name first. My mother stiffened like someone had slapped her with a subpoena. My father's jaw tightened. I walked in without looking back. Because this wasn't about pleasing them anymore. It was about revealing them. And the thing about revealing someone who thrives in the dark, they burn fast when the lights turn on. The courtroom felt colder than I expected, sterile, unforgiving, honest. I took my seat at the front, folder in my lap, and waited. My parents sat behind me, whispering frantic strategies like I couldn't hear them rehearsing denial. Just say it was a misunderstanding. Don't admit anything. She doesn't have real proof. They had no idea how prepared I was. They raised a child with a memory sharper than their excuses. They just never expected that child to use it. Across the room, my brother slouched in a chair like a guilty spectator. He hadn't spoken to me in months, not since he moved into the house they claimed wasn't mine. He lived there rent-free, courtesy of my parents' need to reward obedience. He wouldn't meet my eye. He knew what he'd done. He knew what he'd accepted. And he knew I knew. When the judge walked in, the room shifted. My parents straightened. My brother swallowed hard. I placed the folder on the table in front of me. That sound, the soft thud of paper hitting wood, was the real beginning of everything that followed. But to understand how much power rested in that folder, you need to go back one more layer, to the night before court, when I sat in my grandmother's old room, rereading every document she left me. One line stood out, a handwritten note in her fading cursive tucked inside the original deed. If they ever try to take what's yours, remember who you are. That sentence replayed in my mind as the judge asked me to present my evidence. So when I stood, not shaking, not nervous, but steady, I wasn't just defending property. I was defending a promise. I handed the folder to the bailiff. He placed it on the judge's desk. The judge flipped it open. Silence coated the room like frost. Page after page, his expression tightened. And then he reached the page with the forged signature, the one my father swore I never saw. The judge squinted, leaned closer, tilted the paper. This signature, he said slowly, does not match the petitioner's. My mother gasped. My father sat back, face stiff, lips twitching like he was fighting the urge to protest. My brother dropped his gaze to the floor. The judge looked at me again, not with pity, not with sympathy, but with recognition. Recognition of a lie finally cornered, recognition of a truth finally set free. He cleared his throat. "We will have to review this more thoroughly," he said. "This is substantial." That was judge speak for, "This is about to get very, very bad for your family." And here's the twisted beauty of it. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt accurate. Because this wasn't revenge. This was restoration. This was taking back what was already mine. And as I turned slightly, just enough to see my mother's face crumble, I felt something shift in the universe. Not cruelty, not satisfaction, just alignment. The truth had finally caught up. And if you were sitting there, hearing the judge question a signature you watched them forge, what would you have done? Long before the judge dissected every lie, before my parents realized they weren't the masterminds of this story, but the villains stumbling through their own downfall, there was a night when the truth practically begged to be found. It began in the kitchen of the childhood home I apparently didn't deserve, a home that suddenly felt smaller, heavier, almost claustrophobic with secrets. I had returned not out of sentiment but necessity, needed one last look around before confronting them. The air was thick with that familiar smell of lemon cleaner my mother overused whenever guilt crept into her conscience. She scrubbed feelings the way other people scrubbed countertops, aggressively, desperately, hoping the stains wouldn't come back. I remember standing there, leaning on the cold granite, watching her avoid eye contact while she sliced apples like each one had personally wronged her. "You're early," she said, still slicing. Not greeting me, not welcoming me, just managing me like an inconvenience. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The silence between us stretched long enough to make her fidget. "We're having dinner in an hour," she continued. "Your brother is bringing dessert." That was the first warning sign. My brother never brings anything unless it benefits him. Dessert meant he had something to celebrate. And suddenly the table was set, the mood was forced, and the stage was prepared for a performance I had no intention of applauding. Dad arrived next, carrying a stack of folders. The same kind he used when handling family business. The moment he saw me, his eyebrows lifted in mild surprise or mild annoyance. Those two emotions are indistinguishable on him. "Didn't expect you home this early," he said, adjusting his tie like the house was a boardroom and I was an employee violating dress code. I watched him place the folders on the table. The sound they made, the dull, heavy thud, was the same sound they made in the courtroom when I set mine down. Only this time he thought he was in control. My brother barged in 10 minutes later, loud, euphoric, smug, like a man who'd just been handed a crown he didn't earn. He tossed the dessert box onto the table and clapped Dad on the back. "Everything's falling into place," he said. "You really did the right thing." Falling into place. The right thing. Two phrases that became fuel in my chest. My mother smiled at him, that tight little smile she reserved for the favorite child, the one who never earned the privilege but demanded it anyway. "We all have to make tough decisions," she said, lifting her chin, "but it's for the good of the family." I remember thinking how strange it was that the word family never included me, unless they needed labor, emotional support, or someone to blame. But decisions? Inheritance? Property? Suddenly, I wasn't part of the club. Dinner was awkward, as all stage celebrations are. They kept exchanging glances, little nods, little affirmations, as if they were actors rehearsing lines. My brother dominated the conversation, bragging about future renovations, new plans, updated paperwork. Updated paperwork. That phrase froze my fork midair. My grandmother's handwriting flashed in my mind, her note, her deed, the box they never knew existed. Everything clicked in a single electric moment. They had changed the paperwork. Behind my back, without legal grounds, without moral grounds, without shame. My mother must have noticed the shift in my expression because she quickly added, "Your father took care of everything. It's better this way." Better for whom? My brother leaned forward, elbows on the table, swagger filling the room. "You weren't ready to handle the house. We stepped in. You weren't ready." Another phrase that tasted like rust and disrespect. Because here's the thing, I had handled everything in that house for years. Repairs, bills, upkeep, problems they ignored, issues they created. But now, when it came to ownership, they suddenly discovered I wasn't ready. How convenient. "You look upset," my mother said, pretending concern. "This isn't personal." That was the funniest lie of the night. Everything was personal. Every detail, every maneuver, every forged signature. And they knew it. They just hoped I didn't. My father's voice broke through the tension, steady and rehearsed. "The home is better aligned with your brother's needs. He plans to start a family soon." Ah, there it was. The real reason. Not responsibility, not fairness. Optics. They wanted the house to stay in the hands of the child who made them look good. They wanted the inheritance to go to the one who mirrored their worst traits. They wanted the future to resemble the past, a legacy of favoritism, manipulation, and convenience. But they underestimated something. Something big. I don't break. I calculate. And that night, while they celebrated what they believed was a victory, I made a decision so quiet, so internal, that not even the universe could hear it. I would no longer ask for what was mine. I would take it. After dinner, when they moved to the living room for coffee, I excused myself and walked back to my grandmother's sewing room, the last place in the house untouched by their self-serving revision of history. The door creaked open, the same soft, familiar sound from my childhood. The air still held the faint scent of lavender, and, as I stepped inside, a cold realization hit me. They didn't just steal property, they tried to rewrite my identity. They tried to erase the part of me my grandmother believed in most. That's when I found the loose panel. That's when I found the box. That's when the story truly began to unravel backward. That night, standing alone in that tiny lavender-scented room, I wasn't just uncovering documents. I was uncovering everything they tried to erase. My grandmother's intentions, my legal rights, my place in the family legacy. And the moment I read the original deed, the moment I traced my grandmother's signature with shaking fingers, the moment I realized my parents had forged mine, something inside me snapped into perfect clarity. Not anger, not heartbreak, focus, purpose, truth. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't fight. They thought I would fold the way I always did. They thought wrong. And if you had been standing there, documents spread like forgotten history, betrayal in every corner of the room, what would you have done next? The moment before the judge slammed his gavel was strangely calm, almost peaceful, like the universe inhaled and held its breath just long enough for everyone in that courtroom to feel the weight of what was coming. My parents sat rigid, their faces a perfect blend of confusion, denial, and dawning fear. My brother was practically sinking into his chair, as if the wood could swallow him whole and spare him from the embarrassment. But that calm, that single, suspended moment, it only existed because of what happened the night before, because of the conversation that broke whatever thread of attachment was still holding us together. After discovering the hidden box in my grandmother's sewing room, I didn't confront them immediately. People like my parents thrive on the element of surprise. When it benefits them, I wasn't going to give them the luxury of reacting first. Instead, I waited, watched, calculated. It was around midnight when I heard footsteps in the hallway, 2 sets, soft but purposeful. Mom and Dad, whispering, scheming, the kind of late-night conversation they had often, just never about me, or so I had assumed. I leaned against the cracked doorframe of the sewing room, listening as their voices drifted toward me. "She's getting too suspicious," Mom said, her voice thin and shaky. "You should have destroyed the originals." "I tried," Dad snapped. "I didn't know she knew about the panel in the wall." "Your mother always told her too much," Mom hissed. So it was Grandma's fault now? Convenient. Dad sighed heavily. "We'll handle it. She won't do anything drastic. She never does." That line, that one single dismissive line, "she never does," sliced through me cleaner than any blade. Because it wasn't the first time they'd said it. It was a pattern woven into the fabric of my entire childhood. She won't speak up. She won't fight back. She won't leave. She won't question us. She won't demand fairness. She won't disrupt the system. She won't disrupt the system. She won't disrupt the system. She won't claim what she deserves. She never does. They'd built their entire confidence on believing I would always choose peace over justice. They truly didn't understand how wrong they were. When they finally went to bed, I stood there in the dark hallway, clutching the folder and letting that sentence echo in my head over and over again. Not as an insult, but as motivation. If they believed I never did anything drastic, maybe it was time to be drastic. The house was silent, except for the soft hum of the old heater that never quite worked right. I walked slowly through the hallway, trailing my fingertips along the wallpaper my grandmother had put up decades ago. The wallpaper my parents always complained about but never replaced. I suddenly realized why. They never intended this house to be a home. They intended it to be leverage. A bargaining chip, a tool, a trophy. And they used it on the one child who loved it without condition. I stepped into the living room, where the family portrait still hung above the fireplace, all four of us smiling like we hadn't been pretending for years. I stared at it for a long moment, then reached up and pulled it down without any ceremony. The frame cracked against the brick. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. It wasn't anger. It was truth-shattering. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I sat on the floor surrounded by documents, cross-referencing dates, signatures, and transaction receipts like a detective piecing together a case that had been waiting years for its moment in court. Every detail lined up with the next. Every lie balanced on another lie. Every betrayal branched into another betrayal. And by sunrise, the picture was painfully clear. They hadn't just stolen my inheritance. They had prepared for it, planned it, executed it. My brother wasn't innocent either. I found his messages on an old email thread. They had discussed transferring ownership weeks before my grandmother's funeral. Weeks before the funeral. They were picking through the inheritance like vultures before the woman who raised me was even in the ground. By the time sunlight filtered in through the curtains, warming the hardwood floors she once danced on while cleaning, I felt nothing but focus. Revenge wasn't even the right word. Restoration was. Truth was. Justice was. I gathered the papers into the folder, buttoned up my coat, and left before my family even woke up. The drive to the courthouse felt like stepping through alternate realities. Each street another memory of childhood moments that now felt tainted. I remember thinking how strange it was that the world looked exactly the same, despite everything being different. I parked, walked inside, filed the papers, and waited. That's when everything snowballed. The clerk flagged the forged signatures. The investigator asked for background. The judge demanded an immediate hearing, and by the time my parents arrived, breathless and panicked, the truth had already taken on a life of its own. All because of one moment they underestimated. The moment I stopped believing their version of me. And now, sitting in the courtroom, watching the judge flip through pages of evidence with widening eyes, I realized something else. This wasn't the moment they lost. That moment had passed long before they stepped into the room. They lost the second they taught me how to recognize lies. They lost the second they told me I didn't deserve something that was already mine. They lost the second they forgot my grandmother raised me to be brave, not obedient. They lost the second they said, "She never does." Because I did. And if you found every document they tried to bury, every lie they tried to disguise, every truth they hoped you wouldn't uncover, would you still call it betrayal? Or would you call it justice waking up? People think the climax of a family betrayal story is the courtroom moment, the judge's reaction, the exposed documents, the downfall. But the real climax happened hours before that, in a place most people never expect betrayal to reveal itself. The kitchen table where every lie began. And to understand why the judge later stared at my parents like they had personally offended the law itself, you have to understand what happened that morning when I returned to the house one last time before heading to the courthouse. The kitchen was bright, almost blinding with morning sunlight. It felt unfair, like the house shouldn't be allowed to glow when everything inside it was rotten. My mother was sitting at the table, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. My father stood near the sink, staring out the window like the backyard would suddenly present a solution. My brother lingered near the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. They were waiting for me, not because they cared, but because they were nervous. Guilty people always wake up early. I walked in without greeting them, placed my bag on the counter, and prepared to grab the last few things I'd left upstairs. Then my father spoke, voice strained, forced, almost trembling. "We need to talk." I stopped, turned slowly, not because I wanted the conversation, but because I wanted to see how far they'd go to justify what they did. "We don't want things to get out of hand," Mom added, folding her hands like a politician caught on camera, out of hand, as if they hadn't already committed fraud, as if the mess they made was a spilled drink instead of a legal disaster. My brother stepped forward, chest puffed like he was the hero of this story. "We need to keep the family united," he declared, with the bold confidence of someone who had never once acted like family to me. I didn't speak. I didn't give them anything. Silence is powerful when wielded correctly. It makes liars panic. Mom was the first to crack. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "It was never about taking something from you. It was about organizing things properly." Organizing things properly, a poetic way of saying stealing my inheritance and lying about it. My father cleared his throat. "We thought you'd understand." That sentence almost made me laugh. Understand? Understand why they forged my signature? Understand why they convinced themselves the house my grandmother legally gave me was better off in their preferred child's hands? Understand how they rewrote history and expected me to bow to their edited version? Understand why every room of this house felt like a stage where they performed as parents but never actually were? But before I could even decide whether to laugh or walk out, my brother added the line that finally snapped the thin thread holding us together. "We deserve the house more than you. We'll actually use it." That was it. Not the betrayal, not the forged documents, not the months of lies. That one sentence, that single, arrogant, unfiltered belief that he, who contributed nothing, who treated the house like a prop, who lived rent-free while I did the repairs, thought he was more deserving than me. My mother nodded at his statement as if it were perfectly reasonable. My father didn't disagree. And suddenly everything clicked into place. This wasn't just greed. This was entitlement. Entitlement so deep and so generational they didn't even recognize it as wrong. So I finally spoke, calmly, quietly, sharp enough to cut. "My grandmother didn't choose you." Silence, heavy, tense. Then my father tried to speak, but I raised a hand stopping him. "She didn't choose you," I repeated. "And you couldn't stand that." Mom's face tightened. Dad's mouth twitched. My brother's eyes narrowed. "The truth makes guilty people uncomfortable." "Good." I stepped closer to the table, looking each of them in the eye. "You didn't take the house because you needed it. You took it because you couldn't handle not controlling it." My father clenched his jaw. My mother's breath hitched. Her departure was months away. "What are you planning to do?" my mother whispered, fear finally cracking through the denial. "Tell the truth," I said simply. "In a courtroom?" Their reactions were predictable. Mom's panic, Dad's anger disguised as disappointment, brother's threats veiled as advice. "You'll destroy this family," my mother cried. "You think we won't fight you?" my father snapped. "No one will believe you," my brother sneered. The funniest thing? They still thought they had leverage. They still thought they were the ones who could intimidate. They still thought I was the quiet, obedient one, the girl who kept peace even when the cost was her own self-respect. But that version of me was gone the moment I found the documents in the sewing room. I grabbed my bag and stepped toward the door. My mother reached out, as if touching me would stop the truth. My father shouted my name with the authority he imagined he still had. My brother muttered, "You're making a mistake." I paused at the doorway, not because their words mattered, but because I wanted to leave them with the sentence that would echo in their minds forever. "You taught me how to recognize a lie," I said without turning around. "You shouldn't be surprised that I finally stopped believing yours." Then I walked out. And that walk, from the kitchen they lied in to the courthouse where the truth waited, Felt like crossing a bridge I would never return from. I didn't look back. Didn't hesitate. Didn't second guess. For the first time in years, I wasn't the child they conditioned. I was the adult they underestimated. And if you were in that doorway, betrayed, insulted, underestimated but armed with truth, would you have stayed or done exactly what I did? By the time the judge leaned back in his chair, the entire courtroom felt like it was tilting on its axis, the weight of the truth rearranging everything my parents thought they could control. He hadn't even rendered a verdict yet, but the shift was already happening. Subtle, seismic, irreversible. My mother's fingers were twitching against her purse strap, my father's knee was bouncing like he was trying to outrun responsibility, and my brother looked like someone had unplugged his entire personality. The silence in the room wasn't empty, it was loud, echoing every lie they had built their confidence on. But before the judge delivered the words that would end their version of the story, something far more powerful unfolded inside me. A moment, years in the making, a moment that didn't happen in that courtroom, but in the exact place where their betrayal began. The front porch of the childhood home they tried to erase me from. I remember standing there earlier that day, staring at the chipped paint I once fixed when I was 14. The same porch where I had sat with my grandmother drinking lemonade we pretended wasn't too sour because she always forgot the sugar. I stood on that porch, knowing it might be the last time I ever saw the house without seeing betrayal embedded in the walls. The morning air was cold, sharp, honest in a way my family never was. I took one slow breath and let everything sink in. The weight of the documents in my folder, the heaviness of the lies they told, the exhaustion of carrying their version of me for so long. And then it happened. A moment so small yet so defining it snapped something in the universe. My mother stepped onto the porch behind me, arms crossed, voice brittle. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, like I was the villain rewriting the script. My father joined her, voice low and irritated. "This is unnecessary. We can fix this privately." That was the moment I realized something they never wanted me to notice. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were trying to contain it. Contain me. Contain the truth. My brother appeared last, standing at the doorway with that same smug confidence, the kind only people who've never been held accountable possess. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be," he said. "It's just a house. Just a house." The house where my grandmother taught me how to be decent while the rest of them mastered manipulation. The house where I patched their mistakes, cleaned their messes, solved their problems, and held everything together while they pretended they were the glue. The house they didn't want me to have because it meant I had something they couldn't control, something they couldn't claim, something they didn't earn. I turned to all three of them, finally letting my voice carry the weight of years I stayed silent. "It wasn't just a house to her," I said. "And it wasn't just a house to me," my mother scoffed, ready to gaslight her way out of it. But I didn't give her the chance. "You didn't take it because you needed it," I continued. "You took it because you couldn't stand the idea that she chose me. You needed the story where you were the rightful heirs, the good children, the deserving ones. But you weren't." My father's mouth opened, closed, opened again. It was the first time in my life I'd ever seen him speechless. Good. They deserved to feel the echo of every moment they dismissed me. I walked down the porch steps, ready to leave, ready to let the truth take its rightful place, but something made me stop. Not sentiment, not regret, but clarity. I turned back and said the sentence that would replay in their minds long after the court date, long after the ruling, long after their confidence shattered. "You didn't teach me loyalty. You taught me observation." And I observed everything. That was it. I walked to my car, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Ownership. Not of the house, of myself. Hours later, when we were all sitting in the courtroom and the judge finally cleared his throat, that porch moment echoed through my ribs like a drumbeat. He re-examined the pages, his eyes tracing every forged line, every illegal transfer, every signature my father practiced but never mastered. He set the papers down and looked directly at me first, not them, not my brother, me. Then he spoke the words my grandmother would have smiled at. The petitioner is the rightful owner. All subsequent transfers are null and void. My mother gasped. My father froze. My brother looked like someone snatched the future out of his hands, but the judge wasn't done. In addition, he said, voice firm, an investigation into the forged documents will move forward. Charges may apply. My mother covered her mouth. My father's face went pale, not embarrassed pale, but the kind of pale that comes right before a collapse. My brother sank lower in his chair, finally understanding the consequences of aligning himself with lies. But I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I didn't savor it. I didn't gloat. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. Revenge is satisfying. Justice is stabilizing. And truth is liberating. As I stepped out of the courtroom, folder in hand, the weight that had been pressing on my shoulders for years finally slid off like it was never meant to stay. The world felt bigger, lighter, clearer. My phone buzzed, messages from them, calls, apologies, excuses, attempts to negotiate, attempts to rewrite the narrative again. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because the moment I walked down those courthouse steps, I realized something profound. I didn't just take back the house. I took back the version of myself they never wanted me to become. Confident, independent, unmanipulated, and unafraid of the truth. And if you were walking down those steps, with justice at your back and freedom finally within reach, would you look back at them? Or would you walk forward, like I did, without hesitation,